men. And as per usual, I use the term ever so loosely. I got here two pieces of threaded rod. This is steel, grade B7 from McMaster Carr, 1¼ by 6 threads per inch. This thread was rolled, and that gets to be very important for this story, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. This is 1¼ diameter by 6 threads per inch. It is not steel, it is cast iron. And this was machined thread. This is part of a piece of old equipment brought to me by a channel supporter, a very good channel supporter who's made quite a few gifts to the channel. And it's part of a piece of machinery that he wanted me to do some repair work on. And it consisted of this piece of threaded rod, and it had a couple of steps in diameter and a keyway on one end for a crank. Initially, it would seem to have been a pretty simple repair job, but as it turns out, there were complications. These are 6 threads per inch, and the problem is my lathe will only thread down to 7 threads per inch. So when he asked me to take this project, I thought, sure, how hard could it be? You know, cut a few threads, machine a diameter, bore a hole, put a keyway in something, not a big deal. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Let's go into the difference between machine threads and roll threads. A machine thread profile, the peaks and the valleys are as sharp as your cutting tool is. So I'm just going to talk briefly about how roll threads are produced versus machine threads. And, you know, machine threads are produced with a cutting tool on a lathe. I think most of you are probably familiar with that. There's plenty of YouTube videos out there about cutting threads. Roll threads are made in a thread rolling machine. And basically there's a die that has threads machined into the face of the die, and a corresponding die that has threads machined horizontally in the face of the die. The two dies sit in the machine opposite of each other, and they are constantly running against each other. Well, not against each other, but they're running against a threaded rod that gets dropped in the middle between them. So you get this kind of an effect. And these things are under immense pressure, and they force the pattern on the die into the rod. That's how they work. And just by the nature, you're not going to get very sharp valleys or very sharp peaks. And the problem that this leads to when you're trying to mix something with cut thread into something with roll thread is your peaks and your valleys aren't going to line up. In this particular project, the threads are on what I'll call the nut side of this machine. And the machine is an over 100-year-old piece of antique motorcycle machinery. And I assume it's probably fairly valuable. Well, you know, the owner's problem was that, you know, somebody dropped it and it just busted this thing off. So he had to recreate this part one way or another. Well, I had intended just to machine everything out of a piece of carbon steel. Unfortunately, I go out to my lathe and I find out, oh geez, the lathe only cuts 7 threads per inch, and this is 6 threads per inch, so I can't do it that way. So now I have to buy a piece of threaded rod and get the two things to put together. So I got the piece of threaded rod. I made the, you know, the diameter reduction on one end. I had a machine a Morse taper a hole in the other end for a point that got pressed in. I had a machine a little shaft sticking out of one end with the keyway in it so the crank could go on. So I got to put it all together and it doesn't fit. And the problem ended up being this. The peaks on the inside part of the nut, the peaks were too pointy to fit in the valleys on the threaded rod. So, you know, you have to go in now to the threaded rod and turn these shallow, roundy bottoms into a peak-shaped bottom so that the rod can mate properly with the nut side. On the opposite side of the threaded rod, it didn't matter that these were rounded because they didn't need to go all the way to the bottom. So, the pointy side of the rod meeting the valley side of the nut, no big deal. But the pointy side of the nut meeting the rounded side of the rod, yes, big deal. So I had to now make all of these rounded valleys turn into nice sharp points. So let's go out to the machine shop and I'll show you how I did that. Okay, plan A was to chuck up the piece of rod in the lathe and, triangular file. Each of the sides is, each of the angles is 60 degrees. It's a 60-degree thread. So plan A was to chuck the rod up in the lathe, getting a triangular file. Each angle was 60 degrees. It's a 60-degree thread. And the plan was just to do this to it. The problem with plan A is that if you look carefully at this edge of the file, this isn't a point. This is actually kind of flat. So it really wasn't making the bottom of the V, the bottom of the valley. It really wasn't making the valley any sharper. It was making it wider, but not sharper. Plan B was to get a smaller triangular file, and it also is not really pointy at the edges. It's kind of flat. So yeah, it's sort of worked, maybe a little bit better, but this was not a very speedy process anyway. So this faded by the wayside. Now I'm up to plan C. And plan C was take my carbide scraper and stick it down in the valleys and use the point on this to scratch out the valley to receive the peak on the nut threads. And this just, this is just sketchy. So while I was doing this, the customer who was watching me, I was trying to get this done while he was here, and this was just sketchy. And he said, do you have something you can lean that on like a wood turner would do? And I said, well, yeah, I do, as a matter of fact. I have a steel bar I chucked up in a holder for my quick change tool post, and I could lay my carbide scraper on the steel bar. And I don't know, this just scared me. I had visions of that carbide scraper getting stuck in there and kicking back, and having this sumbitch impaled in my chest 6 inches deep. So I bailed on that idea, but that led to plan D coming up next, which proved to be the winning combination. Okay, so here, believe it or not, this ended up being the solution. Piece of high-speed steel ground to a very sharp 60-degree point, lathe running home. And I probably shouldn't even show you this because I gotta believe this is extremely dangerous and probably not something you really ought to be doing. But it worked so fucking good. Well, until that happens. Put a little oil on there. Put a little oil on here. Just a piece of steel bar. The height is adjusted so that the point of the cutting tool is in the, the center of the bar I want to adjust. And that's it. This, and you probably could see there, you could see the metal this is removing. Worked really, really well. His comment about, like a tool rest for a wood turning tool, all of a sudden I thought, well, damn it, why don't I just put something to cut threads on there, a piece of high-speed steel. And, if I could have programmed my hand to move at 6 threads per inch, who even needs gears, Although I don't think that's possible. But you see, the rod is not straight, which is one of the other problems of dealing with something like rolled threads on a piece of threaded rod. And this is grade B7, so it's kind of tough stuff. At one point, I was even holding this tool with my fingers, and it's amazing how little pressure it really took in the inbound direction to get this thing to cut metal. Anyway, I thought I'd pass this on with you. Once again, I got to think this goes down as something that is potentially extremely dangerous. Don't try it at home unless you really, really have to, of course. But yeah, worked good, very happy with it. And for today in this video, that's all I have for you. I am out of here. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for watching. Men, if you like this channel and this content, the single most important thing you could do to help grow this channel is to hit the subscribe button. I also have new design coffee cups and stickers available. I like the old coffee cups, but I like these new ones even more. Links are included in the description down below. And for those of you who really want to go the extra mile, you could join me on Patreon. Link is also included in the description down below. And to all of you who have watched these videos, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you very much. I really, really do appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Bye.